How's it going, guys? My name is Kevin. I'm a DP out of Orange County, California, and today we're doing a production breakdown. Let's get this. I want to start a little mini series that kind of breaks down all my productions that I'm on, and some of them are big, some of them are small, but I want to go through all the decisions that I make in my production workflow and why I made them. This is kind of, for me, just as much as it's for you, just kind of as a way for me to document my progress, highlight the things that I did well, and try to figure out the things that I could have done better on each of these shoots, and just ultimately improve. And hopefully you can come along and improve with me. This is something that I wish was around when I was starting out, so hopefully you benefit from it. To preface, there are tons of DPs that I look up to who could literally run circles around me, and I look up to those guys, and you guys know who you are, so feel free to give your input, tear me to shreds in the comments if you need to. I can take it. I'm just trying to get better. Okay, cool. So for this job, this was for an agency that I always work for and have worked for the last few years at least. We've developed an awesome relationship. They're out of Costa Mesa, California. They're called Creme Collective. Shout out to the homies, Layla, Kayla. I see you. I'll see you guys next week. We got a production coming up. Anyway, Creme Collective, they're awesome. They do a ton of creative work for beauty brands. So the first thing I look at when I get a job or I get hired on is I look at the mood boards, and just to get a gauge and wrap my head around the creative vision. And for this shoot, we had to tackle a few different elements. We had 4 different sets. One was on a seamless backdrop where models were demoing and showing products directly to the camera. And then the other 3 were actually different bathroom sets that Kayla and her team built in each of the corners of the studio. And this is where models would be activating and applying products in a bathroom, kind of looking off camera. And so, yeah, the mood boards gave me a good idea of lighting, and they kind of informed me on what gear to bring, first of all, what to shoot it on, and even how many crew I'm going to need. So my crews are typically smaller. There are the occasional jobs where there'll be just a massive 30-person crew, but typically I'm under 5 people. For this job, it was myself. I had a first AC, Caleb Solis, and then I had a G&E swing, Anthony Souza. I'll link their names down below. Shout out my boys. How we doing? Yep. So I chose to shoot this on the Canon C500 Mark II, kind of a newer camera, not the newest, but newer camera. It's their full frame, and I rented this for 2 reasons. I rented it because I knew Canon has great skin tones, and they always had great skin tones, and their colors are pretty great when it comes to that department. And the other reason was because I was kind of considering upgrading to the C500 Mark II, and it was a toss-up between the Red Gemini and C500 Mark II. More about that later. But my buddy Griffin, he actually bought that camera, and he allowed me to use it. And so we used the C500 Mark II. I decided to shoot it in C-Log 2 in Canon's 4K 10-bit 422 codec, and this gave us great dynamic range and great color depth. I chose not to shoot in RAW because we were in a controlled studio and in a controlled environment, and then we shot everything in 24 frames per second. So on the first set, the seamless backdrop set, we had the camera locked off on sticks with a Canon L70-200 2.8. I chose this lens because we were shooting mostly portraiture comps, and I decided against the popular 85 prime, mainly because the client wanted a variety of medium and close-up shots. So rather than physically moving the camera back and forth, we could simply just zoom in and out accordingly. We also added a Tiffin Black Pro Mist 1/8 on the lens. I just love the way that subtly softens skin texture and smooths color transitions and highlight roll-offs. It's a great filter. So to light the seamless backdrop set, I wanted a very soft, very natural, nothing too contrived, sort of natural light. I chose to light this with a single aperture 300D Mark II into a big 60-inch softbox, and I positioned this light just off camera right to create a little directional shape to the face. Very simple, very straightforward, nothing too crazy. We shot a series of products with 2 different models, which I thought looked great. So bringing these into post for color, I really liked using the Arri Log C Rec 709 LUT. I find that the Canon LUTs, they're not good. They're way too red, they're way too magenta. and I find the area LUTs kind of give more of a natural, more neutral color tone. Coloring this footage is very, very easy. There's not really much to it because, you know, when you're shooting in a studio, at least when I'm shooting in a studio, I try to get as close to the final image as possible, because there's no excuse not to. You're controlling everything. So anyway, I bumped the saturation a little bit in the midtones. I adjusted and added a little bit of contrast, and bam, we're kind of there with no effort at all. Here's some of the shots that we got. The second half of the day, we had to light the bathroom sets, the 3 of them. And I chose to backlight each and every one of these sets and just kind of bounce for fill. I did this because Patrick O'Sullivan told me to do it. And when Patrick O'Sullivan tells you to do something, you do it. You do it. Do it! That, and it creates, you know, contrast within the image, and it creates just visual interest when you're not lighting things flat from the front. It just gives you a lot of contrast, and it looks better to the eye. So we backlit with the 300 Mark II in a spotlight mount and raked it kind of across those plants and onto the model and the back wall. This created a nice backlight, and the shadow of the plants on the back wall created a little bit more texture. And then we supplemented that backlight by bouncing a 300D Mark II in a light dome on the wall from the same direction the spotlight was shining from. This gave us a nice soft light that supplemented that hard light, and it gave us a nice quality soft light that lifted the exposure to a less moody, more approachable level. And then we added a negative fill just to kind of block out some of that light that was coming from the front of the model, from the skylight, and then just to create a little bit more contrast as well. Now we are clipping her face right here on the side. Some of the highlights we're clipping, and that was a little hard to avoid. Mainly because I just didn't have a lot of time to balance out my ratios, and by the time we were done lighting, we already had to be shooting, so there's no time. There wasn't time, okay? That's my excuse, and I don't want to hear it. I didn't have time. Anyway, I think the levels between backlight and fill could have been balanced a little bit better. This is kind of one of those things where you learn about how to backlight and you learn the ratios, and when you have the time to do it, it definitely looks great. But if you're rushed for it, just get as close as you can. And, you know, I still think it looks great. I still think it looks good. But that's one thing I kind of would have taken more time on if I had that time, is balancing those ratios. For the next 2 bathroom scenes, we basically use the same framework. But instead of using the spotlight as a backlight, we used it as an accent to the surrounding walls. And we just blasted some window shapes just to mimic daylight. And we tried to create depth and interest in the shot with leading lines, and added some gobo shapes just to enhance and sell the shot. We kept the 300D Mark II in a light dome as a soft backlight, and we just bounced it for fill. And for these, we took the camera off the sticks. We wanted more of a handheld kind of organic look as the models kind of activated each product. And then we switched to a Canon L24-70 2.8. And we kept the Black Pro Mist on there just for that nice little sugar on top. Overall, I was pretty happy with, you know, how it came out. One thing I could have done better was just, again, balancing those light ratios in the first bathroom scene. But it was tough, again, because we didn't have a ton of time. Typically, I try to get the client to add in a pre-light day where we can really spend time dialing in the perfect look and not have to worry about these little minute things that, you know, that bother us. But the client didn't even mention anything. They're probably watching this now and be like, we want our money back. But no, I think it's very minimal. If you ask, you know, the camera nerds on the Facebook forums, they'll have my head for it. But look, I'm sorry I clipped the highlights. Patrick O'Sullivan, if you're watching this, in fact, no. Patrick, turn this off. You shouldn't be watching this. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helped. You know what? I'll try to do as many of these as my time permits. It's going to be a busy month, but I'm going to try to get them in there. Leave me any feedback, any comments. I know there's pros out there that might be watching this. Show me how you guys do it. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what I did right. And don't forget to subscribe. Also follow me on Instagram where I post a ton of BTS, rig pics, color stuff, production yum-yums, all that good stuff. It's at Kevin Reyes, at first name, last name, Kevin Reyes. All right, bye-bye, toodaloo.
Bye.